Hey, you know how they say the number one fear of most people is public speaking? Well, the number one fear of most guitar players is public playing, meaning playing guitar in front of other people. And for a long time, this used to be my fear as well. I used to secretly hope that nobody would ask me to even play for them. Now today, I've overcome this fear for the most part, and I'd like to help you do the same. Now, I can't promise you're gonna feel like James Bond on stage by tomorrow, but the more you apply these tips, the more you'll feel fear melting away. There are two keys to overcoming your fear of live playing: changing how you practice and changing what you think about. Now, both are important, but what you think about is actually most important because your thoughts control how you feel and your feelings control how you act. So let's get into it. Tip number one: drop unrealistic expectations. And this is so critical and nobody ever talks about this. Everyone wants to play perfectly and nobody likes to make mistakes. Hey, I get it. I don't like making mistakes any more than you do. But here's what you don't hear. Nobody, and I mean no guitar player alive, plays as well on stage as they do at home. Now, some guitarists do play really close to their best when they perform, but everyone makes a lot more mistakes than you realize, including some of the world's best guitar players and including some of my favorite guitar players of all time whom I respect a lot. This means you can stop putting pressure on yourself. Stop wishing you would play perfectly because you won't. Most importantly, stop thinking that others expect you to play perfectly because they don't. If you put that pressure on yourself, guess what happens? You become more likely to make a mistake and then feel bad about making the mistake, and that frustration only causes you to make even more mistakes, and that creates a negative spiral that only makes you play worse. Say this to yourself instead: I'm human, I'm going to make mistakes the same way that everybody else makes mistakes, and when I play in front of people, I'm not going to play as well as I can play in my bedroom. And this is key, I am going to be okay about it. I forgive myself for all the mistakes in advance and give myself permission to have fun. Now, I'm not saying that you shouldn't try to play as well as you can on stage. Of course you should, and I'll help you with that in just a minute. But it all starts with resetting your expectations. And by the way, the reason why you, me, and everyone else makes more mistakes on stage is because there's so many variables that are out of your control. And this, by the way, goes much deeper than just feeling stage fright. It has to do with how much time you have to warm up, the temperature in the room, the gear you play through, how well you can see your hands and hear yourself, and so many other factors. Now, compare that with playing in your room, where you have total focus, familiar equipment, lots of time to warm up, you're playing with perfect room temperature, and so on. You can set everything up just right to play at your best. And when you play for others, you don't always have that luxury. And the sooner you realize this, the less pressure you're going to feel, and this is the best part, the less pressure you feel, the better you will actually play, the fewer mistakes you make, and the more confident you become. So reset your expectations and start the spiral in a different direction. Tip number two: go and see your favorite band play live and pay close attention to how the guitar player plays. And you'll likely notice one of two things. You'll either hear them make a lot more mistakes than you ever realized before and continue to play through them like a professional, or you will find that the acoustics in the venue are not too great and you can't hear the notes clearly enough to tell if there are mistakes or not. And guess what that means? If you can't hear all the notes, it means nobody else in the audience can hear all the notes either. And by the way, sometimes the mix on stage actually masks a lot of your mistakes. So when you make a mistake on stage, the music still sounds okay to the audience because they don't hear as many mistakes as you hear. Bottom line, it doesn't matter if the guitar player on stage is playing at 100%, 95%, or 85% perfectly, or even less. They just keep playing like nothing happened, and most of the time, nobody notices anything. Tip number three: keep a running list of all mistakes that happen when you play for others. It also helps if you remember what was happening when mistakes occurred. For example, do you lose track of time when playing with a poor mix? Do your hands get out of sync when the room is too hot and you start to sweat? Do you tend to make more mistakes when you play on unfamiliar equipment? Make a list of all the things that go wrong and what causes them, and you're going to fix these mistakes one by one in the next step. Tip number four: practice for real-life guitar playing. This is where you close the gap between how your playing sounds when you play for others and how it sounds when you play for yourself. Keep in mind, you will never close that gap completely, but you can make that gap very small. Now, how do you close that gap? Do your best to mimic live playing situations where mistakes come up most often. For example, use a different guitar pick than you're used to, or use a different guitar and amp if you own more than one guitar and amp, or stand up and practice just walking around your room while practicing instead of sitting down the whole time. Practice with blinding lights in your face. Strobe lights work great for this, but if you don't have a strobe light, just use a regular light or just practice with your eyes closed. Point is, get used to playing in an environment where you can't see your hands very well. Also, turn off all familiar effects on your amplifier and practice with an unfamiliar tone that exposes your mistakes more. Play outside. Practice when your hands are sweating instead of always playing in a nice air-conditioned room temperature, or even practice when your hands are cold. Just be careful and don't hurt yourself when you practice when your hands are cold. The more you get out of your comfort zone, the more your comfort zone expands. This makes you more calm, more comfortable, and helps you not get angry every time you make a mistake. And that helps you focus on erasing these mistakes from your playing one by one. And tip number 5, the best way to get comfortable with playing in front of others is to do something even more scary. Here's a secret that I found out that works incredibly well. Find 1 or 2 of the best guitar players you personally know, and it would help if they also teach guitar, and play guitar in front of them. Now, why is that so valuable? Because it's actually more difficult to play in front of 1 or 2 people who have their attention 100% focused on you than it is to play in front of hundreds or thousands of people. Because when you play in front of 1 or 2 people who are good enough to spot your mistakes, every mistake you make becomes much more obvious and the situation feels a lot more stressful. Now, fortunately, this is also something you can do pretty consistently because it's a lot easier to get 1 or 2 people to listen to you play than it is to draw a crowd of 200 people every time you want to practice your live playing. And when you get comfortable playing in front of 1 or 2 expert guitar players, playing in front of a few hundred people or even thousands of people, most of whom, by the way, won't even play guitar, will feel way easier than it feels right now. Hey, did you like the video? If you did, then go ahead and subscribe to this channel and also hit the bell so you're notified every single time I upload new videos just like this for you. And one more thing, if you're not interested in playing guitar fast, then ignore everything I'm going to say next. But if you've already tried the old starting slow and gradually building up speed method and you've hit a plateau and you already know that the traditional methods for building speed don't really work all that well, hit the link below and I'm going to show you a new and different way to build speed that most guitarists don't know about that helps you get faster without doing any slow practice. It's pretty cool. I taught it to hundreds of guitar players who paid thousands of dollars to watch me teach it live to them. You get to watch a recording of the masterclass. Just enter your email address and I'll send it right over to you. Hit the link below and I will see you soon.